Nestled deep in the rural outskirts of the small town of Elmwood, Blackwood House stood as a decaying relic of the past. The mansion, once a grand estate, had long since fallen into disrepair, its windows boarded up and its gardens overgrown with weeds. Local lore told of the house's dark history, filled with tales of tragedy, madness, and the supernatural. Jake and Lisa Morrison were a young couple looking for a fresh start, both grown weary of city life and dreamed of finding a peaceful place in the countryside where they could raise their future children. When they stumbled upon Blackwood House for sale at an unbelievably low price, they saw it as an opportunity too good to pass up. "Are you sure about this?" Lisa asked Jake as they stood outside the imposing gates for the first time. Jake squeezed her hand reassuringly. "It's a fixer-upper, sure, but think of the potential. We could turn this place into something amazing." The realtor, Mr. Thompson, had been hesitant to show them the property. "You must understand," he had said. "The house has a bit of a reputation. People around here believe it's haunted." "Haunted?" Jake had laughed. "Come on, those are just stories." Lisa wasn't so sure, but she trusted Jake and wanted to make a home together. They signed the papers and moved in within a week. The first few days were spent cleaning and making basic repairs. The house had a cold, damp feel to it, even in the summer heat. Strange noises echoed through the empty halls at night, creaks, whispers, and distant footsteps. Lisa tried to brush them off as the sounds of an old house settling, but a growing sense of unease gnawed at her. One evening, as they were unpacking in the living room, they heard a loud bang from upstairs. "What was that?" Lisa asked, her eyes wide with fear. "Probably just a loose shutter," Jake said, though he didn't sound convinced. "I'll go check it out." He grabbed a flashlight and headed up the creaky staircase. Lisa waited anxiously, the silence pressing in on her. Minutes later, Jake called out, "Lisa, come up here. You need to see this." She hurried upstairs and found Jake standing in front of a locked door at the end of the hall. The door, which they had previously assumed led to an attic, was now slightly ajar. Jake pushed it open to reveal a narrow staircase leading up into darkness. "You think it's safe?" Lisa whispered. Jake shrugged. "Only one way to find out." They climbed the stairs, the air growing colder with each step. At the top, they found a small room filled with old dusty furniture and cobwebs. In the center of the room was an ornate, antique mirror, its surface covered in a thick layer of grime. "This must have been a storage room," Jake said, wiping the mirror clean with his sleeve. As the dirt cleared away, the mirror's surface seemed to shimmer and ripple. Lisa gasped as she saw her reflection, only it wasn't her. The woman in the mirror wore an old-fashioned dress and had a look of utter despair on her face. "Jake, look!" she cried. Jake turned to see the reflection and froze. The woman in the mirror began to move, her lips forming silent words. Suddenly, the mirror shattered, sending shards of glass flying across the room. They both ducked, shielding themselves from the glass. "What the hell was that?" Jake yelled. "We need to leave," Lisa said, her voice trembling. "Something is wrong with this house." They hurried back downstairs, but as they reached the bottom step, they heard a child's laughter echo through the halls. The sound sent chills down their spines. "Did you hear that?" Lisa whispered. "Yeah," Jake said, his face pale. "We need to get out of here." They grabbed their keys and ran out the front door, not stopping until they were safely inside their car. As they drove away, they could see the silhouette of a figure standing in one of the upstairs windows, watching them leave. The next day, they returned to the house with the local priest, Father O'Malley, who had agreed to bless the house and rid it of any evil spirits. Father O'Malley was a tall, stern man with a deep voice and a reassuring presence. "Believe there are spirits here?" Lisa asked him as they walked up the driveway. "I've seen many things in my time," Father O'Malley said. "There are forces in this world we cannot explain, but we can protect ourselves from them." Inside the house, Father O'Malley began his blessing, sprinkling holy water in each room and reciting prayers. As he worked, the atmosphere in the house seemed to grow heavier, the air thick with tension. When they reached the room with the shattered mirror, Father O'Malley paused. "This room is the source of the disturbance," he said. "The mirror was a conduit for the spirits." "Can you stop them?" Jake asked. "I can try," Father O'Malley said, "but it will not be easy." He set up candles and incense around the room, chanting in Latin as he performed the exorcism. The temperature in the room plummeted, and a fierce wind began to blow, extinguishing the candles. "Stay back," Father O'Malley shouted as the room filled with a swirling, dark mist. The mist coalesced into the form of a woman, the same woman they had seen in the mirror. "Leave this place," she hissed, her voice echoing with a malevolent power. "We will not," Father Amali said firmly. "In the name of God, I command you to leave." The spirit screamed, and the windows shattered, sending shards of glass flying. Lisa and Jake ducked, covering their heads. The spirit lunged at Father Amali, but he stood his ground, holding up a crucifix. "By the power of Christ, be gone," he shouted. The spirit shrieked and dissolved into a cloud of smoke, which quickly dissipated. The room fell silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifting. "Is it over?" Lisa asked, her voice shaking. "For now," Father Amali said. "But the house still holds many secrets. You must be vigilant." In the days that followed, the Morrisons tried to settle back into their routine, but the house never felt quite the same. They continued to hear strange noises and see fleeting shadows out of the corner of their eyes. They decided to research the history of Blackwood House, hoping to uncover the source of the haunting. They visited the local library and found old newspaper articles about the house. It had been built in the late 1800s by a wealthy businessman named Charles Blackwood. The house had a tragic history. Charles' wife, Elizabeth, had died under mysterious circumstances, and their young daughter, Annabelle, had disappeared shortly afterward. The house had been abandoned for years before the Morrisons bought it. "Do you think the spirits are Elizabeth and Annabelle?" Lisa asked Jake. "Maybe," Jake said, "but why are they still here?" They decided to visit the town historian, Mrs. Whitaker, who lived in a quaint cottage at the edge of town. Mrs. Whitaker was a kind, elderly woman with a wealth of knowledge about Elmwood's history. "Blackwood House has always been a place of sorrow," Mrs. Whitaker said when they told her about their experiences. Elizabeth Blackwood was deeply unhappy. She was often ill, and there were rumors that Charles was unfaithful. "And Annabelle?" Lisa asked. Annabelle was a sweet child, but after her mother's death, she became withdrawn. She spent most of her time in the attic, playing with her dolls. One day, she vanished without a trace. Some say she ran away. Others believe she was taken by spirits. "Is there any way to help them move on?" Jake asked. "Perhaps," Mrs. Whitaker said. "If you can find Annabelle's favorite doll and return it to her spirit, it might bring her peace." The Morrisons returned to Blackwood House with renewed determination. They searched the attic and found an old, dusty chest filled with Annabelle's toys. Among them was a porcelain doll with a cracked face and a faded blue dress. "This must be it," Lisa said, holding the doll gently. They took the doll to the room with the shattered mirror and placed it on the floor. "Annabelle, we have your doll," Lisa said softly. "We hope it brings you peace." For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a soft, ethereal light filled the room, and the spirit of a young girl appeared. Annabelle smiled, her eyes filled with gratitude. She took the doll and hugged it tightly, then slowly faded away, the light dimming as she vanished. The oppressive atmosphere in the house lifted, and the strange occurrences ceased. The Morrisons felt a sense of peace they hadn't known since moving in. Weeks later, they received a letter from Mrs. Whitaker. "Thank you for helping Annabelle," she wrote. "Blackwood House is a better place now, thanks to you." The Morrisons continued to live in Blackwood House, cherishing the peace they had worked so hard to achieve. They often thought of Annabelle and Elizabeth, hoping they had found the rest they deserved. And though the house remained a place of whispered secrets, it was no longer a place of fear. Also, in the end, just don't forget, it wasn't just a puppy. So you better click that subscribe button